The guns roared over Manila Bay. Smoke filled the air. Spanish and American troops clashed in a chaotic battle for control of the Philippine capital. At least, that's what the newspapers said. In reality, something strange was going on. The Spanish were firing in the air. The Americans were pretending to fight. And Filipino revolutionaries who had fought for years to free their country were being kept outside the city walls. This wasn't a battle. It was a performance. This was the mock Battle of Manila, a staged military engagement designed to transfer power from Spain to the United States without letting Filipino forces take part. Today, we're diving into one of the strangest chapters of the Philippine-American War, a moment that changed the future of a nation with barely a real shot fired. Let's rewind a bit. In April 1898, the United States declared war on Spain, sparked by the explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor. While Cuba was the flashpoint, the war had global consequence, especially in the Pacific. Half a world away, Spain still held on to one of its oldest colonies, the Philippines. Enter Commodore George Dewey. On the 1st of May, 1898, Dewey's fleet steamed into Manila Bay and decisively defeated the Spanish Navy at the Battle of Manila Bay. It was a lopsided victory. American casualties: 1. Spanish ships, all sunk or captured. But Dewey didn't have enough troops to take the city itself. And there was one more complication: Filipino revolutionaries. Led by Emilio Aguinaldo, Filipino forces had already been fighting Spain for independence. Dewey had promised vague support for their cause, even helping Aguinaldo return from exile in Hong Kong. By June, Filipino forces had surrounded Manila. Aguinaldo declared independence on the 12th of June, 1898, and established a revolutionary government. But behind the scenes, the Americans had no intention of letting the Filipinos take the capital. They had bigger plans. By July, US reinforcements had arrived under General Wesley Merritt. The Spanish governor of Manila, Fermín Jóvenes, knew he was cornered, surrounded by Filipino revolutionaries on land and Americans at sea. Spain was losing the war, but the governor had one last request. He wanted to surrender to the Americans, not the Filipinos. Why? For one, it was a matter of honor. Surrendering to another imperial power was humiliating. But surrendering to a rebel colony, that would have been utter disgrace for the Spanish Empire. So, a secret deal was struck. The plan? Stage a fake battle just convincing enough for the public, but controlled enough to minimize real fighting. The Spanish would pretend to resist, the Americans would pretend to attack, and the Filipinos would be kept at arm's length. Yes, it was basically the world's deadliest theatre production. The US Navy began a heavy bombardment of empty Spanish fortifications. Cannons thundered, shells whistled, but real casualties? Minimal. Very minimal. On land, American troops advanced cautiously into Manila. Spanish troops fired, mostly into the air. A few exchanged shots were real, just to keep up appearances. But for the most part, both sides stuck to the script. The whole operation was choreographed to avoid serious fighting while looking like a legitimate conquest. Meanwhile, outside the city walls, Filipino forces watched, furious. They had done the hard work of surrounding Manila. They had declared independence. They had fought and bled. But now, they were being denied even the symbolic victory of entering their own capital. Aguinaldo's forces pleaded to join the battle. They were told, "Wait your turn." Spoiler alert. Their turn never came. By mid-afternoon, the Spanish formally surrendered Manila to the United States. There was no grand ceremony, no raising of flags, just a quiet, behind-the-scenes transfer of power. Spain, though defeated, had preserved its honour. The United States had seized a major colonial city without a true battle. And the Filipinos? They had been completely outmaneuvered. As American troops moved in, they blocked Filipino forces from entering the city. Tensions escalated. What had been a loose alliance between Filipino revolutionaries and American forces was quickly unravelling. Aguinaldo realised that the US had no intention of supporting full Filipino independence. For the Americans, the Philippines weren't just a battlefield, they were the prize. In December 1898, the Treaty of Paris officially ended the Spanish-American War. Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States for $20 million. No mention of Filipino independence, no role for Aguinaldo's government. The Philippines had simply gone from one colonizer to another. By February 1899, full-scale conflict erupted between American troops and Filipino forces. The Philippine-American War had begun. It was brutal. Fighting lasted over 3 years. Tens of thousands of Filipino soldiers died. Civilian casualties ran into the hundreds of thousands. And all of it arguably stemmed from the deception at Manila. That one-staged battle had set the tone for everything that followed. Today, the mock Battle of Manila is both a historical curiosity and a symbol of betrayal. It shows how diplomacy, empire, and military strategy can twist the truth. How words like liberation and freedom are sometimes just theatre performed for the cameras and rewritten for the history books. The Philippines wouldn't gain full independence until 1946, nearly 50 years later. The events of 1898 remind us that not all wars are fought on the battlefield. Some are staged in boardrooms, or whispered through backdoor deals, or choreographed like a play, with actors, scripts, and a very confused audience. And if you're wondering, yes, the Spanish and American soldiers probably gave themselves a standing ovation afterward. So, was the mock Battle of Manila a clever manoeuvre to avoid bloodshed, or a betrayal of a revolution? That's up to you to decide. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's strangest almost battles, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. And remember, not everything in history was as real as it seemed. Sometimes, the biggest battles were all for show.